Hey guys, welcome to Mr. Valentin's YouTube video for Act 1 of Macbeth. So I'm going to go over plot diagrams, and literary terms, and actual plot events and quotes that occur throughout the story. If you have your V-notes and your textbook, that's helpful. Otherwise, take notes while you're listening, and enjoy. Alright, so we're going to begin with a review of the plot diagram. The plot diagram is this whole thing. You've seen this before. Many of you commented that you've seen this before. Plot diagram is broken into 6 parts, each associated with an act. So, the first part of our story is the exposition. The exposition is this beginning part right here. It's associated with Act 1. It's where we're introduced to the characters and the setting and basic plot information. At the end of Act 1, an event will occur. This event is what we call the inciting incident. It's designated by this dotted line. The inciting incident propels the story forward. It makes us interested in the story. It allows the events to continue. The next part is the complication. The complication is designated by this line going up. The complication are all the events occurring in Act 2. The next part is the climax. The climax is the highest point of action. It's associated with the events that occur in Act 3. The next part is the denouement or the denouement. It's associated by this line going down. It's the events leading to the resolution. And finally, we have the resolution. And the resolution are the concluding events, and it's associated with Act 5. So again, exposition associated with Act 1, inciting incident, the end of Act 1, the complication, Act 2, the climax, Act 3, the denouement, Act 4, and the resolution, Act 5. Make sure you know how to spell these words. These words can be a little tricky, right? Especially inciting, right, is a T sound, inciting incident, right? And denouement, denouement, all right, D-E-N-O-U-E-M-E-N-T. Some important literary terms to go over. The stage directions you should know. It's those enter Macbeth, or thunder and lightning. The next part is mood, sometimes known as tone. The mood is the attitude a writer has towards the subject they're writing about. It's evident in their diction, their style, or their opinion if they express one. The mood in Macbeth is a creepy mood. We get that by the witches and their thunder and lightning in the way that they speak. Allusion is a literary term we've had before. Right? It's a reference to a literary, historical person, place, or thing. Exposition, which we just went over, where we're introduced to the characters and setting. Inciting incident, right, sometimes known as the narrative hook. Setting, the location of our story. Aside. An aside and a soliloquy seem similar, but they're obviously not the same thing. An aside is when a character reveals private thoughts and there are other characters on stage, but the other characters can't hear them. Alright, so characters reveal private thoughts. If I could spell today, I'll just type it. Character reveals private thoughts. And other characters are on stage. Let me move that there. Make this smaller. There. That's better. Alright, so character reveals private thoughts and their other characters are on stage. A soliloquy is the character reveals private thoughts, but the character is alone on stage. Dramatic irony. Dramatic irony is when the audience knows more than the characters. That the audience is somehow more aware of what's going on than the characters themselves. An omen is a prophetic sign. Tragic hero. In our story, the main character, Macbeth, is our tragic hero. He will have some type of flaw that will cause his downfall. And the tragic flaw is the thing that will cause, inevitably, his death. So these are the important literary terms for Act 1. Act 1, Scene 1, does not begin with Macbeth. Usually in Shakespeare plays, you're not really introduced to the main characters at the beginning of the play. In Romeo and Juliet, we're not introduced to Romeo until a little bit later. So, the opening of Macbeth begins with thunder, lightning. We find out the location is Scotland, and we're introduced to the three witches, who are very haggard-looking. At the very beginning, they say, "Fair is foul, and foul is fair," which translates roughly into good is bad and bad is good. So we know the witches are kind of troublemakers, and they state that they seek Macbeth. So if you have your text with you and you're open to Act 1, Scene 1, right, the first thing they say is, "When will we meet again?" To which they respond in thunder, lightning, or in rain. And it becomes clear that they kind of this evilness lurking. And who do they want to meet? They want to meet Macbeth. So the idea at the end where they say fair is foul and foul is fair, all right, is kind of the idea that anything goes. That whatever happens, happens. All right. So the big idea from this that you should get is anything goes. That's the big idea from Act 1, Scene 1. Act 1, Scene 2 still does not have Macbeth. And so we still don't really know who this guy is, but we kind of get some descriptions. It begins with Duncan. Now, it's important to know that Duncan is the King of Scotland. All right, so you want to make sure you know Duncan, King of Scotland. We'll also be introduced in this scene to Malcolm and Donalbain, who are his sons. Malcolm is the eldest son. So the scene begins, and there's this captain who's bleeding all over the place. The audience finds out that there was this fight with this traitor, whose name happens to be MacDonald. So MacDonald is the traitor. And so Macbeth was fighting him, and so they got into a clash, and it states in the text, and this is around line 21, "which never shook hands nor bade farewell to him, till he unseamed him from the nave to the chops." So Macbeth unseamed MacDonald, and by unseamed they mean he inserted his knife through his navel and brought it all the way up to his neck, which are his chops. So that's what they mean by that. So MacDonald is a traitor. Macbeth is evidently heroic because he killed this MacDonald fellow. And that's kind of our background in Act 1, Scene 2. Meanwhile, you get some strong allusions. The captain mentions Golgotha, and Golgotha is an allusion to the location where Jesus died. So that might be of some important value. And meanwhile, Duncan doesn't show too many emotions. Dismayed not our captains, Macbeth and Banquo. So Duncan wants to know where Macbeth and Banquo, and on the corner I have a picture of Macbeth and Banquo. And the captain is just bleeding all over the place, and he's saying, "But I am faint, my gashes cry for help." And Duncan's response is, "So well thy words become thee as thy wounds. They smack of honor both. Go get him surgeons." And then the captain is led off the stage, presumably to go die or be attended to some surgeons. Other characters are introduced as well, but they're of not too important of a value. One of the characters, Ross, talks about MacDonald, and we find out, all right, that MacDonald was a disloyal traitor, and he was the Thane of Cawdor. So that's important. Good. And that's kind of the whole quick little Act 1, Scene 2. Act 1, Scene 3 finally introduces us to Macbeth and Banquo. It begins with the witches, and the witches are telling this kind of strange story about this sailor's wife. And the first witch says, "The sailor's wife had chestnuts in her lap, and munched and munched and munched. 'Give me,' quoth I, 'ronte, witch,' the rump-fed Runyon cries. Her husband's to Aleppo gone, master of the Tiger, but in a sieve I'll thither sail. And like a rat without a tail, I'll do, and I'll do." Alright, so the first witch is describing the scene where she saw this sailor's wife who was eating some chestnuts, and she wanted some of these chestnuts. But the lady, of course, seeing these kind of crazy witches, said, "Absolutely not." So that's kind of seems to be the end of the story. But then, later on, she pulls out a thumb, and we can assume that this thumb is not the sailor's wife, but rather the sailor himself. She says, "Here I have a pilot's thumb, wrecked as homeward he did come." Alright, so she tends to be a little on the creepy side. The Weird Sisters just tend to be creepy. Now, they're known as the Weird Sisters. So we certainly want to know that they're like weird. But we also might want to know that this could be a mistranslation, that words have changed over time. Alright? And that the actual word is wayward, as in traveling. Right, they were the traveling sisters. So that's something to keep in mind. Enters Macbeth and Banquo. Right. Notice Macbeth's first line, "So foul and fair a day I have not seen." And this certainly calls back to Act 1, Scene 1, where the witches say, "Fair is foul and foul is fair." So they're walking along. It doesn't seem too eventful. All right. Banquo, for those who are unaware, is Macbeth's best friend. So we certainly want to note that. Macbeth's best friend. All right. And the only thing we know about Macbeth is that he is the Thane of Glamis. So as I was saying, they were walking and they bump into the witches. And the first witch says to Macbeth, "All hail Macbeth, hail to thee, Thane of Glamis." Now Macbeth is the Thane of Glamis, so this doesn't come as any surprise. The second witch says, "All hail Macbeth, hail to thee, Thane of Cawdor." Now, Macbeth is not the Thane of Cawdor, so this would seem a little bit strange. And the third witch says, "All hail Macbeth, that shalt be king hereafter." And Macbeth certainly is not the king. So, Banquo kind of watches the scene and says, "Good sir, why do you start and seem to fear things that do sound so fair? All right, in the name of truth are ye fantastical? All right, that these things are too ridiculous to really understand." And so Banquo kind of wants his own prophecy. And his prophecy is that he shall get kings, though thou be none. So his children, Banquo's children, will become kings. Banquo's children, but not Banquo himself. All right, so that becomes kind of our prophecies throughout the story. All right, that Macbeth will become the Thane of Cawdor, and now that the Thane of Cawdor is dead, this is a thing that is literally about to happen, and he's not the King of Scotland. So that's kind of out of the question, at least at this moment. All right. So, Macbeth kind of takes this whole thing as denial. He's saying that the Thane of Cawdor lives, even though we know he's dead because Macbeth killed him. All right, so there's kind of this denial that occurs. And then the witches vanish. And they're a little confused, but their response is kind of funny, all right? They start laughing at them, all right, as if they've taken some drugs. They say, around line 83 and following, he says, "Were such things here as we do speak about, or have we eaten on the insane root? There takes the reason prisoner," all right? Have they eaten insane root? Have they taken drugs? This is so crazy. And then Banquo says, "You shall become king," and they start laughing, all right? And Macbeth says, "The Thane of Cawdor," and it's this kind of giggle fest, all right? They find the whole thing ridiculous. But then Ross and Angus enter. And then Macbeth finds out he is the new Thane of Cawdor. All right. So in the process of this whole situation, Macbeth becomes the Thane of Cawdor, and it's kind of this frightening moment for him. All right. Macbeth has his first set of asides, all right, where he says, "Come what come may." I think this is an important quote. "Come what come may," which is kind of like, what happens will happen, all right? And there's concern in him, all right? He's a little frightened at the prospect of this. Act 1, Scene 4 is great at summing up the events of the play thus far. It's quick. We find out, basically, in this little scene that Macbeth is officially Thane of Cawdor. He's crowned Thane of Cawdor, and I have this picture here where we see Banquo kneeling to King Duncan, and King Duncan has kind of the coolest looking scarf thing I've ever seen in my life. So that's kind of exciting. And the other important bit is that his son, Malcolm, the oldest son, becomes the Prince of Cumberland. All right, so you might want to make a note, if you haven't, that Malcolm becomes Prince of Cumberland. And Prince of Cumberland is the title that you get when you will inherit the throne. All right, that he's the next in line to become king. All right. So Malcolm becomes Prince of Cumberland, and Macbeth is officially the Thane of Cawdor. Act 1, Scene 5 begins with Lady Macbeth reading a letter. She's alone on stage, so this indicates a soliloquy. And the letter, again, sums up the events of the story about how Macbeth met the witches, and what they said, and how they said he was going to become the king, or the Thane of Cawdor, and become King of Scotland, and then shortly thereafter he became the Thane of Cawdor, and he was kind of creeped out. Lady Macbeth is kind of this, like, strong and assaulting figure. Her first response after reading the letter is, Glamis thou art, and Cawdor, and shall be what thou art promised. So she's saying, Lady Macbeth, that he is going to become king. All right, he shall be what thou art promised. But she's concerned. She says, I do fear thy nature is too full of the milk of human kindness. That she's afraid he's a weakling, that he's too nice. And that's problematic. So the servant enters and exits over and over again. It's kind of this weird little thing where they find out that the king is coming to the house. All right, Lady Macbeth hears an omen. She hears the raven outside, and she says, the raven himself is hoarse that croaks the fatal entrance of Duncan. So she really feels that that the world is telling her that Duncan needs to die. And the rest of her soliloquy kind of verges on a little creepy. She says, come, you spirits that tend on mortal thoughts, unsex me here and fill me from the crown to the top full of direst cruelty. Make thick my blood, stop up the excess, and passage to remorse, that no compunctious visitings of nature shake my fell purpose, nor keep peace between the effect and it. Come to my woman's breast, and take my milk for gall, you murdering ministers. Wherever in your sightless substances you wait on nature's mischief. So the first thing she really says is, unsex me here, all right? Make me a man. Why? Because women were thought of as weak during this time, and so she really wants to be seen as this strong figure, and only a man would be that strong, and kind of this idea of take the milk from her breast and replace it with gall. Gall is bile. An excess of bile in the body was thought to cause envy and hatred. And so Macbeth enters, and they start talking and conversing, and it's really this kind of odd scene because Lady Macbeth is giving like these similes where she's like, look like the innocent flower, but be the serpent under it. And Macbeth's only response is, we will speak further. He has no interest in harming King Duncan. But as you can see, and I like this picture on the left with kind of crazy eyes, all right, that she really feels that it's important that they find a way for Macbeth to become king. Act 1, Scene 6 is a very quick scene. It has a very quick pace about it, and it has a lot of characters in it, but it's only some 30-plus lines. So it's full of dramatic irony over and over. The first thing Duncan says is, this castle has a pleasant seat. All right. The air nimbly and sweetly recommends itself unto our gentle senses. He's describing how pleasant the castle is. Meanwhile, we know Macbeth, or Lady Macbeth, has been plotting his murder. So this is a strange little moment. And when he meets Lady Macbeth, he calls her an honored hostess. And the love from her is just wonderful. And so, of course, the audience realizes, we know as the audience that Lady Macbeth is plotting to kill Duncan. And Duncan has no idea. Act 1, Scene 7. Just a couple things before we start. Regicide is an important vocabulary word. It's the assassination of a king. And tragic flaw is the flaw in the tragic hero. We're actually going to see Macbeth's tragic flaw in this scene. And I also wanted to start with these pictures, because as creepy as Lady Macbeth is, she really does love her husband, and that's why she wants him to be in power. And these scenes with them together are often oddly erotic. There's a lot of touching and holding. So I just wanted to pull up a couple pictures so you could see different portrayals of Lady Macbeth and Macbeth and how intimate they are with like this hand-holding and this staring. It's really strange. So Act 1, Scene 7 begins with Macbeth and a soliloquy. And he talks about if he's going to do it, all right? If he's going to kill King. So he says, if it were done, then 'tis done, were it done quickly. If the assassination could trammel up the consequence. But it's a lot of if. It's no, like, definitely he's going to do it. But he does seem kind of thinking about it a lot, and it's kind of a creepy little moment. And it's at the end that we see his tragic flaw when he says, vaulting ambition. And it becomes clear from this point that ambition is going to be Macbeth's tragic flaw. So keep that in mind. Through the scene, there's kind of like this I'm not going to do it. All right. He says, at the scene, he says, "We will proceed no further in this business. He hath honored me of late." All right, that King Duncan has honored him, and he doesn't want to kill him. That being said, Lady Macbeth still wants to go through with it. And the way that she kind of gets him to go through with it is by demanding him. All right, she says, and this is around line like 47, she says, "What beast was it then that made you break this enterprise to me? When you durst do it, then you were a man. And to be more than what you were, you would be so much more the man." All right, so she says, if you were really a man, you would do this. And if you were a man, you would kill him. But it's very much she kind of puts it on him. And she says, "I would, while it was smiling in my face, have plucked my nipple from his boneless gums and dashed his brains out." All right, that she would kill her own baby while it was suckling on her nipple, and she would do it with a smile on her face. So we know there's a certain huge dementedness with Lady Macbeth. And it's here we have the inciting incident. All right, we have the plan to kill Duncan. So the plan is broken into 5 parts. All right, the first part, we got to get King Duncan asleep. The second, I think I said 5, but I meant 4. All right, get Duncan's guards drunk. Third, all right, kill Duncan with said daggers. And lastly, place the daggers and the blood, all right, on the guards and frame the guards. This way, the guards who are drunk, it looks like they've committed the crime. All right, and that's the inciting incident of our story. That kind of propels our story forward. All right, so hopefully, all right, that was helpful. That's Act 1. If you haven't already, download the V-Notes, all right? I go over all this stuff on the handout, and sometimes in more detail or things that maybe I've left out, all right? So keep that in mind, and yeah, that's kind of that. So be sure you download the notes. If there's any questions, be sure to ask, and that's it. So that's Act 1. Act 2 is soon to follow.